What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So, as expected, Nintendo, with a big release coming up, has it leak out online, and this one's a bit interesting just because of the history with the title, but also the physical copy of the game. Some images appeared online for that, and something in there it's actually quite surprising to see, and we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the Xbox 360 as a new discovery's been made, an exploit that opens up homebrew for the platform to many more people, especially if you're someone who doesn't like to pick up a soldering iron. And we have a new studio that's been formed within Sony. It's been confirmed, and actually a familiar name is now brought back into the fold, and we'll go over all of that here today. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early. If you would like to learn more about that, click the join button or the link in the description down below. And we're going to start today with Saints Row, the game from 2022, but also just the franchise itself, as it's pretty much over. And a lot of that, of course, has to do with the game that came out in 2022 that was just disastrous from quality standpoint, the direction of it, the aesthetics, everything about it, really. Well, the CEO at Saber did actually discuss this and was even asked point blank as to why the franchise is pretty much dead at this point, and this we can see posted up. Now, this was over on Games Radar. They're citing GameFile with Stephen Totillo, as he did ask the CEO at Saber Interactive, Matthew Karch, and he said they were so expensive for what they were. They didn't know what they were building, they didn't have any real direction, and it couldn't last. And so, who's going to fund them for the next game after that disaster? That's very blunt, but also, yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's not much else to say there in the sense that that Saints Row game was bad. I mean, people will say just because of the characters and the overall tone of the game, but even quality-wise, it was disastrous. Like, some of the glitches I saw happen when as I played through that game, which was like 25 or 30 hours, something like that it took me to get through it. I mean, it was funny, but also kind of sad to see the state of the franchise. So it makes sense why they would step away from it after the damage that game did to just the entire series. And I don't know if it'll ever return, but if it did, it'd probably have to be like 10 or 15 years down the line when you're remembering some of the older games versus the 2022 release, and you kind of have that nostalgia high, and maybe then they could drop a new Saints Row, and hopefully it would look radically different from the most recent one. Also, it does look like Silent Hill F, which of course had the big reveal last week, maybe it does make it out this year. And I say that because the ESRB rating is live. You can see it over on their website for Silent Hill F. Of course, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and Windows PC. There's quite a bit here in terms of the description for the game, but the idea being, oh, it has the ESRB rating, M, mature, 17 plus. I don't think anyone's shocked about that. But the fact that that is here and filed, it does seem like it's coming sooner rather than later. And I feel like, of course, we had that trailer, the big reveal. We had an initial reveal trailer, just announcement for it years ago, but having this show up with much more detail and the ESRB rating, I'm kind of wondering if this could be another release where they try to get it out around that Halloween end of the year kind of season, sort of like what they did with Silent Hill 2, and I think that'd be really cool. So the fact this ESRB rating is here does give me hope that Silent Hill F could be a 2025 release. Oh, and something really cool happened over the weekend when it comes to Halo 2. And I don't mean Halo 2 in the Master Chief Collection, I mean Halo 2 online on the original Xbox, which is still a thing, believe it or not, despite those servers being shut down. Insignia has sort of just kept this going, and you can see this posted up. This is over on Pure Xbox with the original Xbox post here from Reddit, citing it with Halo 2 on Insignia, having a peak player count of 148 people on Saturday. Now, the thing with Insignia is there is quite a bit you have to do to get it up and running on an original Xbox. So it's not something where you just pop Halo 2 in, it'll automatically connect for you right out of the gate. There's some back-end work that has to be done to get this set up. But once you do, it seems to work really well, and it's still pretty small at this time. So to see Halo 2 have more than 140 players randomly on a Saturday is actually quite impressive. I don't know if it'll ever get to the level where there's thousands of people online for Insignia, but the fact that there are like 148 hardcore fans still playing Halo 2 on the original Xbox is really fun to see. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and what basically happens every time a big Switch game is coming up, especially first party wise, it leaks online, and this happens, of course, by way of it sneaking out of the back door of a warehouse somewhere or falling off of the back of a truck, and then somebody just dumps it using their modified switch system, which there are plenty of, no shortage of those out there, and then it spreads online. And it appears that's what's happening right now with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. Now, it is out this week on the 20th, so we're not that far away, and I guess the nice thing here when it comes to story spoilers in general, this is a very long game. Like, it would be very difficult, I think, right now for someone to pick it up and then be able to spoil anything towards the end of the game by release day. Not that someone couldn't try to marathon the thing and get it done out of just internet troll spite, just to annoy people, but the odds are low, I guess, for that happening. Still, though, things that can happen early in the game or midway through, even up to getting, like, your skull and showing some of that, that's stuff that sure could be spoiled. But this was noted over on Reddit here with a post, and I also took a look around myself. Yes, it's accessible currently, the files, you can download it, and I'm sure people are doing that quite a bit right now on all of their favorite distribution websites, we'll say. But something else came up from this, and you can see this is posted up by Arrow over on X, and they show the kind of the box art here for it, of course, for Xenoblade Chronicles X, but then they opened it up, and I was a little surprised. I mean, it has the reverse cover art. Really, really cool, right? I'm glad that we are getting stuff like that, rather than you open up the game or the case and it just has a bunch of like warning information and terms of whatever, right? It's just that white page with all the black text and stuff. It just looks so boring. Here though, it looks really cool, but also there's like a pamphlet manual kind of thing going on. I from here it looks like it's one page, I guess, front and back. I'm just so used to opening these cases now and just nothing really being there. I mean, sometimes you get like, again, like the white paper with the fine print on it and that's it, or you get an advertisement for another game. In this case, it looks like a Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition with online and sort of explains some parts of the game, almost like a manual? Okay, well, it's not that clearly. It's always been funny to me that those tabs exist in these cases. Like, Nintendo clearly put them in there thinking, oh, well, I guess we'll have things to put there, just advertising and stuff. It barely gets used. I mean, most time you open up and there's nothing there. At least in this case, there is something there with Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. But, of course, here's your warning. Yes, the game is out there. It's being thrown around freely at this point. So if you see a thread that says, hey, spoilers about Xenoblade Chronicles X, look out for it. And I know it's a re-release from the Wii U. 1, it looks awesome, right? 2, there is additional content in it. And 3, how many people out there right now who have a Switch had a Wii U? And then on top of that, how many of those people who had a Wii U bought Xenoblade Chronicles X? I'll tell you how many. Less than 1 million. So just based on the trajectory of Xenoblade's like entire franchise right now, where it keeps selling more and more and more with each release just about, this should do much better and it should reach an audience that never played it. So yes, it's going to be new to them, and that means things can get spoiled. So just keep an eye out there and watch out for any of that flying around social media. Next up, let's talk about the Xbox 360, you know, the one from 2005. Well, a discovery was recently made, and I love this about these older systems. When you see something like this get found, I mean, almost 20 years later, at the end of this year, it'll be 20 years of the Xbox 360, which is just wild to think. But having something like this be discovered where now you can unlock the system technically, like jailbreak it, load homebrew from just a USB stick, and you don't have to open the thing up, it's quite impressive. Because before, it seemed like that was going to be impossible. You'd have to mess with the motherboard or flash firmware to the disk drive. You'd have to open the system one way or the other to make this happen, but not so much now. There are some caveats to this, but first though, this was actually posted up over on MVG's channel, and it says, any Xbox 360 can now be hacked with just a USB flash drive. I'll have this link down below in the sources if you want to see kind of the process, the sources, but in this case, he's actually citing a new exploit that was released on GitHub by Grimdoomer. And they said a bad update, which is what it's called, is a non-persistent software-only hypervisor exploit for Xbox 360 that works on the latest 17559 software version. This repository contains the exploit files that can be used on an Xbox 360 console to run unsigned code. It goes on to say the exploit can be triggered by different games. Specifically, they list 2. Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, which is incredibly expensive online, and then Rock Band Blitz, which, according to MVG, you can just use the demo for that. So you can download that pretty easily, drop it on a flash drive along with the exploit, and as MVG shows, it goes, and sometimes it takes a while because there's a 30% chance, I believe, of it working, which means you could be sitting there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Apparently, if you get to like 60 minutes or something, you're gonna have to restart, and you can tell by the moving background if it freezes. But this exploit, it's not persistent, which means you have to do this every time you turn your Xbox 360 off and then back on again. So it's kind of annoying now, sure, because you might have to sit there for a while for it to then jailbreak the system or unlock it and then run homebrew. You also have to patch a lot of the applications. So the reset hack glitch, RGH, that's the best one to do right now. It's become much simpler. There are more steps, and yes, you have to open the system, you have to solder, and some of those points are kind of small. I did an entire video showing the process, and I understand it's just not gonna work for many people, probably the majority of people. I see the comments on my video are like, hey, this is really cool. I'm never gonna do it, but it's really cool. So if you're someone who has a 360 sitting in a closet somewhere and it really haven't done much with it, this will work on everything. In fact, MVG showed it on that Xbox 360 Slim E version that is not exploitable through like a reset glitch hack or anything like that. So really cool that it can work on any of them, and that you can just kind of kick around with the 360 in homebrew mode and just try some apps that you were curious about that you've always seen people with those reset glitch hack or JTAG systems be able to run. You could try it out for yourself, even if it is something that's technically not persistent. You can like play around with it, leave the system on for a bit, try out a few things in the homebrew scene, and just be like, you know what, I did it. I'm not going to do the reset glitch hack stuff, but I at least got a window into that world. Next up, let's talk about a patent that actually made the rounds quite a bit for Nintendo, as people, of course, look at this as being linked to the Switch 2. But the thing with this patent, it's an update, and I don't think it's as exciting right now as what people are saying because it's not new and it's very much expected at this point with their partnership with Nvidia. Nonetheless, though, we can see this was posted up over on Nintendo Life. And they say that an AI upscaling on Nintendo Switch 2 is basically real thanks to an updated patent. Now, the patent that they're referencing does have some passages that were pointed out here along with this image that kind of shows the process and more of a flowchart setup. It says image up conversion is a technique that allows for conversion of images produced in a first resolution, so 540p resolution or 960 by 540, 0.5 megapixels, to a higher resolution. So it'll go up to like 1080p or with 2.1 megapixels and so on. This process can be used to show images of the first resolution on a higher resolution display. So the idea, of course, being that they are upscaling images so that they can run games better without having to sacrifice too much visual fidelity. Now, the thing with this, though, the patent has been updated many times. This is not new. I think this one patent has been updated 3 or 4 times now over the last 5 years. It's like it was filed back in March 25th, 2020 originally. It was made public the following year in September 2021, and since then it's also seen other updates. This most recent one mostly just appears to fix up some of the legal terminology and stuff around it, and this is from NERD or Nintendo Europe Research Development, and it seemed like originally this patent started out as being like offline upscaling, just more advanced techniques. And now it's kind of really blossomed out to being, with neural networks and much more advanced, which, as expected with Nvidia, they'll probably tap some form of DLSS so that they can take advantage of some of those benefits, really, of going with Nvidia, which should work out, I assume, in docked mode specifically, but who knows? This could be something that also helps out in handheld mode, where when Xenoblade Chronicles 2 goes to such a low resolution that you can't see the characters' faces, well, now you can kind of at least make out their eyes and their nose. But this, to me, while the patent is interesting, and I think the fact they keep updating it is showing that, yeah, that's probably going to be their strategy going forward, it was pretty much standard fare at this point when it comes to some of these patents. So as we go into April 2nd, I'll be more curious if Nintendo highlights this at all, this feature of advanced upscaling, or if it's something that just happens in the background and they just kind of don't really mention, but you sort of notice it when the games just look much better than what's currently on the Switch. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a new studio that's now been formed, or has been formed for a while now at PlayStation, and this was sort of informally announced, which we can see this over on Gamatsu, and this is coming to us from Jason Blundell, and he announces on Jeff Gerstmann's bonus podcast. He says, quote, "I've had the amazing opportunity to create a new studio within PlayStation Studios for Sony. The studio is called Dark Outlaw. And so Dark Outlaw games have been working away in the shadows for a while. And when we've got something to talk about, we'll step out into the light. But you know, the story for me is about the game, not about the studio. So the reason why we're not doing a fanfare or shout about it from the rooftops is like, let's get something, right? Well, that's a great idea because if you remember, Jason Blundell had formed Deviation Games and they sort of made that announcement with Jeff Keighley on stage. And the announcement was just that they formed Deviation Games. They didn't tell us what they were working on, and they had a partnership with Sony, it seemed, right? And from there, I guess Sony pulled funding or they didn't like what was being made, and Jason Blundell had left in September 2022 anyway, and I guess later on he went over to Sony and they formed the studio. So what could he be working on? Well, he doesn't really go much further than just this really. He says that they're staffing up and they're getting things in place to make the push for this game with full development. And I mean, the obvious thing would be some sort of first-person shooter because his roots obviously in something like Call of Duty. So an action online multiplayer style game, maybe live service, although it could also just be an arena shooter that leans more into that rather than something that has to have a full roadmap. Maybe they could make their, I don't want to say Call of Duty competitor because Sony makes a lot of money on Call of Duty, but something in that vein. Maybe they even tap one of the older IPs that have been kind of dormant for Sony, like a Killzone or a Resistance. That's always possible. Or maybe it's a brand new IP. It's hard to say, but at least for now, the studio, it's out there on a bonus episode with Jeff Gerstmann, but at least the name is out there and we know to be keeping an eye out for Jason Blundell when they're ready to make their big announcement for whatever it is they're working on. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, do you have an Xbox 360 console? Okay, 47% don't have one, but 53% of you still have one, and 19% of you still have it hooked up. I'm curious how many of the 19% have it modded in some way, because that has been something that's obviously been more and more popular, whether buying them outright online or modding it yourself. And I will tell you, when you do a reset glitch hack, it does open the thing up completely. I mean, it's very, very impressive what the homebrew scene has been able to do with not only the original Xbox, but also the Xbox 360. But hey, if you're out there and you're still just playing your retail discs and dropping them in, let me know down in the comments, because I think that's awesome to still hear people playing off their 360 almost 20 years later. And what an anniversary that's going to be, to go from 2005 to 2025, and that thing is still rolling along. Somehow survive the red ring. Actually, yeah, let me know if it's one of the older 360s and not the slim model, because that's gonna be an impressive thing to see still running later on this year when we hit that anniversary. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Deshaun, who says, when you said Star Wars Hunters, my little reaction was, who? With 3 question marks. Well, that explains it. why the game is going away. Remember, this was a game that got announced, and I think it just disappeared for a while. People were trying to figure out what the deal was, what exactly this game was going to be. Oh, it's also like a mobile game too, or the communication wasn't great, the rollout was poor, and then it seems like even after it came out, there just wasn't as much interest because it didn't set itself apart. Again, it's hard, really hard, to be able to break into the market there for live service with some of the juggernauts that are out there. And I mean, like the MPD or Circana, I remember last month had mentioned that 10 games, just in total for live service, ate up 40% of the entire playtime on the PlayStation 5. Think about that. 10 games, 40% of all playtime. How many other games are on the PlayStation 5 then? Like right now, all the PS4 stuff that technically could work on it, 10 live service games ate up 40%, almost half the market. So yeah, if you can break into that scene and sit atop with those 10, you're in great shape. But it's incredibly difficult to break into it, and if people don't even know that you were there to start with, and the way they found out is by you announcing that you're shutting down, it probably wasn't going to work out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to hear about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Well, I got a video going up later on today. talking about my time with it after 25 hours. I'll leave that in a card below it when it goes live this afternoon. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.